professor as an assistant professor and didn't have much guidance from the university in terms of how to advance my career and how to move forward. And Steve took it upon himself to mentor me and coach me on how to advance my scholarship activities. And it really took me through the whole process and allowed me to grow and move forward in that realm of my professional development, which really nobody had assisted before. So I think that demonstrates a sense of leadership that he presented to me and provided me and moved my career forward. And so for that, I'm very grateful.
When Steve and I first met, I was not new to Alliant. I was the program director of our T-cell programs. But I think we worked together for about 8 or 9 years at Alliant. And Steve was in the School of Education, the teacher education side, and I was in the T-cell side. But my first real in-depth work with Steve was when, as the School of Education, we decided to do a major overhaul and revamping of our syllabi for all of our programs and courses. And at the top of each syllabus, there's the university and the school mission and vision and goals. But there's also now a section called Unit Guiding Principles. And Steve was really the driver of that section. So we talked a lot about it to the faculty team that was working on the syllabus revisions, and shared a lot of his knowledge in that area with us, and kind of took the lion's share of writing that initial section, which then, of course, was wordsmithed and shaped by all of us. But Steve really was a guiding force on that section of the syllabus, which exists to this day still.
Yeah, and similarly, when we were going through California Commission of Teacher Credentialing and Accreditation for the program in the university, we were fairly disorganized. And Steve took a lot of leadership in trying to pull together not only the lead aspect, Ken, that you were talking about in the guiding principles of our syllabi, but also providing some structure for us as a team to work collectively and collaboratively towards a successful CCTC accreditation visit. There was a lot of work involved, and again, we didn't have a lot of leadership right out of the gate. And Steve, I think, was very effective in pulling us up together and trying to organize us and giving us the confidence in ourselves to then come together collectively and together as a team make a plan that was successful. But I think there was a lot of leadership involved for each program within the School of Education that Steve provided all of us to have the belief in ourselves to come back with confidence and then collectively have a successful plan.
Yeah, Dr. Fisher, add on to that, I think on a personal note, his, humor, warmth, and inclusiveness creates a team that is able to work together and really bring out the best in each individual. So I think, that's not something that you can necessarily teach. It's something innate that I believe he has. It kind of brings people together and makes them feel comfortable. The humor kind of allows the walls to break down a bit and feel comfortable and taking risks, which I think is quite helpful in a team, in a leadership capacity.
Yeah, I would also say in terms of the team building, I was thinking about Steve's role in scholarship. I've attended conferences over the year, and then there was a particular conference that Steve encouraged myself and other Alliant faculty to attend. So, a number of us would go year after year and to come together as a team. But more than just that, Steve really took an active role in mentoring other faculty who, maybe didn't go to conferences as a typical thing, and sort of assist and guide and present together. So I got to see his scholarship firsthand. But for me, more importantly, was the role that he played in mentoring other faculty and bringing our faculty together as a team. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and I'm one of the direct benefits of that mentorship because, I had worked within the university in a variety of roles, from being assistant professor, associate professor, and program director and system director. But even then, I was not comfortable. I wasn't confident in presenting. And Steve encouraged me. He mentored me and he brought me along. And I had shared with him after one of the experiences at a conference the very first time that essentially he gave me the keys. That at that point I knew how to move forward with my own scholarship activities that before I just did not have the desire or the confidence to do. And he mentored me through that. And so I'm a direct benefit of those roles, Ken, that you had referenced as far as his leadership and guiding other faculty members.
Yeah, I
And
could have
Don,
been an assistant professor for forever, right? So now I'm an associate, and now we're moving towards to be a professor. So yeah, I think it's all because of Steve's mentorship. I agree with you.
yeah, sorry to step on your toes, Don. Don, you mentioned Steve having a sense of humor. Yeah, I would say he has a really easy sense of humor, and he's very pleasant. And I've never known him to raise his voice or have a cross word with anybody at Alliant, co-faculty, staff, anyone. So that's really nice, and it makes for a nice person to work with. And I hope this isn't too personal, but I would say I've seen the same thing on the golf course. So no one would ever confuse me with being an expert golfer, and Steve's probably not in the expert golfer category either. But I've never seen him curse at his golf ball after a miss hit the way I the way I often do. So that kind of easy, relaxed way I've seen in the professional setting, and I've seen it in a personal setting as well.
With that relaxed style, too, though, he still has the capacity and the ability to reframe the communication to guide. So if there's somebody that's like maybe making poor decisions or not stepping up or not taking initiative or has challenged organizational skills or initiation skills, he has a way of presenting the message in a way that feels supportive and positive, but it's also clear that we need to move forward here.
About Dr. Stephen Cochrane and recommend him for a position in your school district as superintendent. I've known Steve since 2005, and we've had a very interesting collegial relationship for the last 2 decades. I started out as a student of his at Azusa Pacific University, and he was my professor, my very first professor, and the best professor I ever had. And what was so wonderful about him is that he saw something in me and said, "Hey, I think you need to look at higher education yourself." And so at the time, he and my husband were both hired at the same time. And I told my husband that my professor saw something in me and he thought I should be working as an adjunct professor. And within the next 2 years, I was an adjunct professor at Azusa Pacific University in the special education department, working alongside Steve. And then eventually I became a full-time faculty member, and he encouraged me to work on a doctorate, and I earned my doctorate, and then I became an associate professor. So I had my career at Azusa Pacific University for many, many years with Steve. And then he left to go to Alliant International University. And at that time, he reached out and asked if I could write some courses for him. And at that time, I did write some courses for him in the special education and teacher education department. And then he hired me as an adjunct professor, and I got to work with him again. Eventually, I was hired as system-wide program director of the California School of Education and got to work alongside Steve as he was the system-wide program director for special ed. So I've worked with him for many, many, many years in different capacities. And I guess what I would say that I think is great about Steve is that he is somebody that I've never heard anyone say a negative word about. Everybody who works with him loves him. He is a wonderful mentor. In fact, I remember when I first started at Alliant, he gathered about 8 of us together and got us to do a presentation in Hawaii for an international conference for education. And none of us had ever done that before. And he mentored all of us through there. And now we all go every single year and do it on our own. So he is not just a colleague and a friend, but he's a mentor, and he's a great leader. He's a great listener, and he always does what's right. I loved working with him very much.
Cindy Pancer, and I'm here to recommend Dr. Steve Cochrane for a leadership position in your school district. I think you'd be very fortunate to have Steve working with you. He's the rare educator who has trained for terminal degrees in two different dichotomous professions that require very different thinking skills. He brings a lot to our profession that I think that you would really value. You know that he's trained as a special educator, and that requires, in my mind, all of us educators are very simultaneous thinkers because we have so much coming at us at the same time. We have to think about the priorities of all different kinds of constituents, but he's also a sequential thinker because lawyers think, in my mind, more sequentially. They start at a beginning point, lay out all the steps to the end point. So he brings both of those methodologies to solving problems. I've watched that with Steve, seeing the game from several different perspectives. I hired him at Alliant almost 10 years ago when I was the system-wide director of teacher education, and we didn't have a special educator leader at that time. I saw his resume, it just jumped off the page for me, got to talk with him and his family a couple times, and brought him on board much to the applause of the people around him. And you may not see him again once you hire him because he just takes off and does what needs to be done. He built out a program in special education, brought on students, brought on the people that worked for him, brought on the professors underneath him, and really took the special education program to another level, including a CTC review, which he pretty single-handedly wrote the proposal for that and pulled that off with 100% appropriate responses from the CTC, very strong reviews. I admired him very much in a situation where he had to give leadership of some aspects of his responsibilities to another educator that wasn't as highly skilled or experienced as him, and he just worked with her until she was what we needed her to be. And when you're training your replacement and you just kind of got to suck it up and do it, that really impresses me when you can keep working with someone and bring them up to the level that you need. As other educators have attested, we very much enjoy the fact that Steve works so much to build collegiality among his team. And whether it's a social get together or whether it's a professional get together where we're working together at a conference, Steve will be the one to say, let's go get a drink, let's have burgers, an impressive thing about him is that he assumed we would all go to each other's presentations whenever we spoke at a conference. I've never had colleagues that did that before. And so we just fell into line and we were in the audience for any presentation that a colleague gave. And we had our colleagues, rooting for us when we gave presentations. And the cutest part of that story is that his children came to the presentations too. And his oldest just asked very cogent questions. So apparently they're little educators in training and know how to hold their own against quite a professional situation. So I would recommend him with high endorsement, and I'd be happy to speak with you if you had more questions. University, and I served on the Professional Education Review Committee when we considered Dr. Cochrane for a full professor. And the committee fills out a little evaluation independently, and then we get together and compare our scores and come up with a unanimous recommendation. And it was very unusual that each of us rated him the highest score, which is a 5 on our rating sheet, in all 3 categories of research and teaching and service to the university. Now, teaching is really the student scores. So that's, their evaluation, which speaks very highly to the adults that Dr. Cochrane has come in contact with. But his his recommendations and his invitations to speak at conferences. I was fortunate to speak with him at a conference one time on the subject of artificial intelligence. And this was 2 years ago. So we were all just getting our toes wet in that topic. And he speaks with a lot of passion about moving forward to the future. And then his service is undeniable, having served as a school district board member also, as well as his service to the university that we observed with our own eyes. So that was a very wonderful experience recommending him.